Hello everyone, this is Lala and today I'm going to be talking about Fresh Meat 2 and my overall thought on it is that I do really like the season. To be honest, this was actually the last season that I watched for the first time since I watched the first few seasons the first time and then I watched this season and then I rewatched the series chronologically for the videos that I'm putting up now. So the season was definitely a lot fresher in my mind. But now that I've watched it chronologically, I definitely do have a lot more context regarding it. It was kind of odd that they did a Fresh Meat 2 at around this point in time, since there were a lot of people from the first Fresh Meat that were still very active, and they're still getting some newbies. But now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of the newbies from the last few seasons, so I would say post Inferno 3, didn't really last long, or they didn't really have that sort of impact. So a lot of them either did one season, two seasons, or they just weren't memorable at all, and they didn't have any longevity. And the people who would have longevity from like the second half of the era, so like Kahara and Kellyanne, they took a years long hiatus. So at this point in time, they were 2 season wonders. And with no road rules being around, and that being the case for most of Era 2, they definitely needed some new blood. And like I mentioned last season, you started to see some of the fresh meat Key West, not really Key West, but yeah, mainly a lot of the fresh meat people and the Austin people starts to slowly retire at around this point in time. So in hindsight, it was definitely a good move that they did a Fresh Meat 2 here, since a lot of the people who defined Era 2 would slowly start leaving the show. But when you compare the Fresh Meat 1 rookies to the Fresh Meat 2 rookies, I definitely do think that the season 1, the first ones were a lot more interesting, they had more longevity, and they were a lot more impactful. Since while a few of them would do a decent amount of seasons, so like a Brandon, a Teresa, especially Laurel, Cara Maria, and to a lesser extent Mandy, there were a lot of them who either didn't come back after the season, or they had another season after this where they just weren't memorable. And I definitely do think that a lot of the veterans carried this season compared to the first Fresh Meat. And we have to talk about Kenny versus Wes. And it was interesting watching this here since neither one of them had many numbers in this season, and it was Kenny by himself, so he didn't really have that toxic atmosphere that being around Evan, Johnny, or even Derek would have given him, and he really had to work from the underdog role for a bit. And even when he was on top during the latter half of the season, he was nowhere near as irritating as he was on the Ruins or the Island. But I would be lying if I said I liked him. And Wes and Evelyn were definitely portrayed as the villains here, as they were screwed over last season. They didn't want that to happen again, and they felt confident because they had the numbers. Obviously, the format is very simple, and it was akin to the first Fresh Meat, which I liked. And also, I have to say that I really love that they went to British Columbia during the fall, and it definitely gave a different atmosphere to a challenge season, but it was a welcome addition as well. I'm not going to waste too much time, we're just going to get to the actual season now. TJ announces the twist of the season regarding Fresh Meat 2, and they had to go through the same drill that the first Fresh Meat group went through a few years prior. Jen is now over girls and strictly for guys, and Wes is single with the breakup with Kellyanne happening between seasons. More about that later on in the season. But anyways, Wes plans to get bees with honeys, i.e. more friends. Darrell picks Cara Maria, though apparently he chose Laurel first, but he changed his mind. Jen chooses Nora, Kenny chooses Laurel, because he states that she's the closest to a guy, which is so backhanded and just awful. Danny chooses Sandy, who is pissed off that she is chosen by Danny because Danny has a poor reputation in the challenge. Wes chooses Mandy because she is like Casey in size and stature. Ryan chooses Teresa. CG chooses Sydney. Landon chooses Carly. Paula chooses Jeff. Sarah chooses Vinny. Jillian chooses Pete. And Caitlin chooses Brandon. And she is tired of the men running things. Luke is the last one remaining, and Jonay was supposed to be on the cast, but she lost her passport on the way, so she had to wait 2 seasons and about a year to join. Though Evelyn flies in late, and she is partnered with Luke, which will be something. The newbies are having a good old time, and Jillian is still with Frank, where he sent her to do the season so she can win. It's been 4 years since the last fresh meet, and Paula is not thrilled that Evelyn, i.e., the biggest threat, is here. Jeff specifically is drunk as hell. Laura is kissing any guy and girl, which I guess could have been a sign in hindsight. Caitlin and Sarah have some issues since they were close on their OG Real World season, but the former wants to send home Kenny or Wes, which Sarah is not feeling, especially Kenny being sent home early. The veterans are plotting, i.e. Jen, Kenny, and Ryan, and they're talking about who to target, while Darrell is just observing them, which they realize he's doing. Wes and Danny pull in Kenny, where they tell him that Darrell needs to go, since he'll beat all of them in the final, especially with the woman who can run, i.e. Cara Maria. Dirty Mouth is the challenge where they have to run into the muddy water to get a large ball and do it blindfolded while their partner instructs them, and it's also raining. And this is a pretty cool challenge. Laurel and Kenny win the challenge, and there's a lot of talk with Wes, Evelyn, and Caitlin, and some other people randomly talking about throwing in Darrell, and the latter knows what is happening, but kind of just lets it happen, since he's never been a political person or player, and it just kind of shows a fault with Darrell as a challenger overall. That still faults him to this date. Darrell and Cara Maria are nominated, and she does not take it well at all, where Darrell knows that Wes was behind it, despite Cara being mad at Kenny. Pete and Jillian are also nominated by the House, and Kenny realizes that Wes and all of these people will turn on him instantly, and he almost kind of regrets his choice. Cara Maria is crying and melting down, so she goes to bed after some of the women cheer her up. Everyone else in the house is having a bunch of fun, and Darrell and Cara are sharing a bed, so I don't know if the partners had to share a bed this season, but it just was just weird to me. Until Cara Maria yells down the house that they need to tone it down because she is going into an elimination tomorrow. And Wes obnoxiously yells that Darrell is getting his karma, which is a bitch! Bitch! And it's just showing his entire ass, since he's not over Darrell throwing him into a bunch of times, or into exile a bunch of times on the first fresh meet. Teresa speaks to Ryan about hooking up with Kenny, and she makes her move on him, but he rejects her, only to say in the confessional that he doesn't hook up with slutty girls, which is just a huge error. And it's stuff like this throughout the season where I instantly am reminding why I do not like him, despite being a lot calmer here. Lost and Found is the first exile where they have to do some puzzles, and in general, I don't care for exiles at all, so I won't be talking about them much in detail. Pete and Jillian end up beating Darrell and Cara Maria, and Darrell tells Peter and Jillian to target Evelyn and Wes as soon as they can. And I guess that eventually happens. Obviously, anyone who watched the show after the season knew that Cara Maria would not be a one-season wonder, but based solely on what she did in this season, I'm kind of shocked that she wasn't a one-season wonder. She wasn't into the politics or the partying atmosphere and seemed to be an energy vampire. Darrell had some opposition for the first time in his career and really didn't know how to handle it, especially with Wes holding a grudge from something that happened 4 years ago, even though they did almost fight last season, so I guess it isn't random. It will take Darrell several years to come back, and he never really recovered on the main show, but I think this was around the time he got married and started having children. There is a party at the start of the episode where we see Vinny and Sarah hook up, and Carly literally smothers Evelyn's face with her boobs, and people are talking about Carly not taking it seriously, and this content being here clearly indicates something regarding her role in the episode. Kenny and Wes are wrestling with one another, though Kenny is rewriting history about never liking Wes. Laurel talks about how Teresa is so hot, and I guess this was another sign that she was bisexual, as we hear Teresa speaking about her infatuation with Wes and Kenny and which one she wants to hook up with, and I just don't give a shit. Wes and Danny, with Kenny present, are talking about sending in Pete and Jill to exile again, since they know about it already, and we see another conversation with the two and Evelyn talking about their alliance, which is them and Caitlin. And the other alliance, which is Kenny, Jillian, Sarah, and Paula. And they want to make it sure that Kenny does not have any sort of numbers this season. I'll Be There For You is the challenge where they have to go down to the bottom of the water to hold a chest. And they have to stay underwater to hold it and not let it drop again. And this is a very dangerous challenge with it being underwater. And holding down weight, or holding weight which will sink you even further, yeah, I just don't like these type of challenges. But they've done quite a few of them in this era. Jillian doesn't even bother doing the challenge, since she knows that she is going to excel anyways, and she's not going to win this daily anyways. Pete literally grabs her and throws it into the water without her consent, and she still swims back to the surface, DQing the both of them. A tiebreaker round between Landon and Carly and Kenny and Laura take place, where Landon and Carly win the challenge, which of course they did because they randomly started giving her character focus randomly in the beginning of the episode. Anyways, no one knows what's going to happen since Landon is not about alliances, and then we move on to Teresa and Ryan talking about the hot guys, and I already mentioned how this annoys the fuck out of me. Evelyn, Wes, and CJ plots to have two of Kenny's numbers thrown in and speak to Landon about it, where Wes speaks to Landon about nominating Sarah and Vinny and Kenny and Laura, and Landon kind of agrees to work with Wes, despite not feeling the best about him. Paula tells Kenny that Landon is going to nominate him, so Kenny speaks to Wes about it, where Wes gives him a lot of bullshit in his talking points. Kenny feels powerless for the first time in his challenge career, and he won't be made a fool out of ever again. So he tells Wes that it will be on when he comes back from exile. Kenny gathers his allies to swing things towards the other alliance, and we also see Wes campaigning to some of the others in the cast as well. Landon and Carly choose to nominate Kenny and Laurel, where Sarah and Vinny are nominated by the House, since a few of the fresh meat people voted differently from their partner, where Caitlin sides with Wes, Teresa can't vote in Wes because he's so hot, and New York votes Jillian and Pete because of their poor performance, which, okay. Kenny and Wes have another confrontation about betrayal and all of that stuff, and it's kind of just a standoff. Sarah also confronts Caitlin for backstabbing her and that she made a rookie mistake, though Caitlin mentions that Sarah only did one season more than her, and this is only her second season, as she literally just came off her rookie season. Sarah and Evelyn also have a tense conversation where Evelyn thinks that Sarah is too overconfident coming from her rookie season, and she chose a bad partner because she wants to hook up with him, claiming that Sarah is also way too entitled. So this is definitely a sharp turn from her last season. Teresa hooks up with Wes at this point. Wait For Me is the exile where they have to hold a weight of buckets to walk up a mountain while completing puzzles along the way. Laura and Kenny do end up beating Sarah and Vinny, and Kenny actually compliments Sarah, but he doesn't feel confident about the votes now, and Wes feels very confident. And I guess this was where Kenny and Sarah's relationship actually became a legit friendship, since I know she still defends him to this day pertaining whatever happened on the ruins, and she mentioned that he took her into his family on Thanksgiving or something like that, so that's kind of just besides the point. Sarah had a huge fall from grace this season, and she went from almost winning her rookie season to being booted second as an entitled person who literally just became a veteran. I see why she and Caitlin became rivals, and her relationship with Vinny becomes important enough, so I see why she came back for future seasons, despite being disappointing here. I don't remember anything about Vinny other than him hooking up with Sarah, but it did give him a few seasons, which is something decent. This is something that a decent amount of the people from this season don't have. So the West Alliance is plotting to get either Kenny or Paula out, and Kenny talks about how he's going to stick with Paula and Ryan, despite them not being good at the game, since they are his friends, and that's almost very nice of him. Almost. Wes knows that if Kenny and Laura win, they will put him and Mandy in, so if that's the case, they need to vote in Paula. Wes and Teresa are getting close, and Paula does not give a fuck about Kenny doesn't give a fuck about Wes having his sloppy seconds. I don't know why I wrote Paula in my notes for this. Anyways, Paula is freaking out about Jeff being too nice with everyone, and she does not like how close Jeff and Mandy are after a week of knowing one another, where the latter thinks Paula is a paranoid fool, and honestly, I agree with Mandy's analysis. We see Paula yelling at her partner, and he tells her that he doesn't care about Mandy, which Mandy ends up overhearing, and that hurts her feelings. Mandy is pissed off about the comment, since they are supposed to be on opposite sides of the house that worked everyone, and doesn't appreciate Paula's manipulations. Jeff really doesn't defend himself well at all throughout any of this. Water Lodge is the daily where they will be up in the air and have to go through the lodges to go across, and we've seen many challenges like this before and after this. Kenny and Laura are the big targets of damn near everyone, but they unshockingly do win the challenge, where they and Paula know that she's going to be thrown in, so now they need to prepare to choose who Paula can beat in exile. There are a bunch of whispers, but Kenny and Laura choose Evelyn and Pete, because he announced on the bus that he has a cramp in his leg, and this pisses Evelyn off, because if he didn't announce that, they probably would not have went in. Paula and Jeff are voted in, which literally everyone expects, though things could have changed had Jen and Nora not played it safe this round. Wes and Teresa are making out on the pool table, and Kenny tells Wes that they are only together because he rejected Teresa, and Wes really doesn't have much to say. Mandy questions Jen's vote, and Jess says that she is a vet and she can do whatever the hell she wants, which is why Nora respects her enough to shut up and follow her advice. Mandy calls Jen a dumb bitch. Jen dares Mandy to say it again. Mandy does say dumb bitch again, causing Jen to not only throw a drink on her, but she pushes Mandy as well. Mandy calls Jen a bitch a few more times, and she calls her a few more bitches after that. And Jen calls her a draft Tory spelling looking bitch in her rant. I don't know why the hell nothing happened with Jen being violent, but it showed that production has never been consistent, and they always pick and choose which violence is acceptable and which isn't whenever the goalposts move in their favor, or in their convenience. Mandy rants about Jen to Wes, where he tells her that he has a pre-game alliance with Jen, where they agreed to sleep in separate rooms and vote differently for the first two votes to be a mule, but she showed her cards here, and Wes then has to hear Jen rant about Mandy. Wes implanted her to pretend to play both sides, but he does not know if she's actually playing both sides or if she's really working for him undercover, so it is confusing. I don't care to recap this Teresa and Mandy conversation, but we move on to the Exile Lost and Found, where Evelyn and Luke does beat Paula and Jeff, where Paula breaks down crying due to her losing her 6th season. Paula really was not notable on the season in my opinion. She did have her freakouts in her final episode, but it wasn't distinctive from her prior or future meltdowns, so it kind of comes and goes. I did find her confessionals to be a lot sharper this season though. Anyways, Jeff really wasn't meant for the challenge on a personality, competitive, or strategic point of view, so him being a one and done is not shocking and makes a lot of sense. Kenny, Laurel, Pete, and Jillian are the only ones in their alliance, with Ryan, Teresa, Jen, and Noor playing in the middle, so they know that while Kenny and Laurel will probably win the season, Evelyn plans to send him in and to break up him and Jillian. Teresa demands to speak to Kenny about bringing up her initial attraction to him to Wes, and Kenny doesn't get why this is an issue, and he clearly does not give a single fuck, and honestly, I really don't blame him in this instance. Teresa is yelling at him and is acting like he's a horrible person to do this, and that's due to all the other stuff that he did on the show up to this point. Danny grabbed some of Pete's potatoes that were not his, and it causes the two of them to start arguing back and forth over it. Wes has to calm down Danny, and Danny is even arguing with Sandy. Danny throws bread at Wes, and Brandon stands up to Danny, which causes Danny to push Brandon, and this was a mistake on his part. Brandon is now ready to beat Danny's ass, and Wes, who was knocked over for a bit by the oven, ends up wrapping his entire body around Brandon to stop Danny from getting his ass kicked, and Wes looks funny as fuck doing this. All of this was essentially for nothing, since Danny and Brandon make up after like 20 minutes. Wes tells Danny that they have to prioritize their numbers, and they both talk about how they are best friends, but Wes mentions that they don't work together well in the game, because Danny sucks. Kenny approaches Ryan about the Teresa stuff that Ryan may or may not have said to her, and we get a segment of Caitlyn, and it's clear to me that she is going in, since it seemed way too random. Anyways, the challenge is King of the Wall, where they have to go to the climbing wall as quickly as possible, and swim 30 yards to do so, and ring the bell, and the challenge is fine, it's decent, whatever. Caitlyn completely injures herself during the challenge as she falls down, where this is a combination of everyone else already making fun of her throughout the season up until this point. Kenny and Laurel win. Once again, Caitlyn is taken to the hospital and everyone is expecting her to not come back. Evelyn and Wes come up with a plan to tell Ryan to tell Kenny that he wants CG and Sydney, causing Kenny and Laura to choose them, but they plan the house vote to be Petey and Jillian to get them back. The plan goes as well so far, and with Caitlin coming back, the house decides to vote in Caitlin and Brandon, because she is injured and there really shouldn't be a reason for her to still be in the house, and she's kind of just a liability. Because the latter are good friends with CJ and Sydney, they decide to go to Excel to essentially quit, where CJ and Sydney can say whatever they want. At some point, Wes dumped Teresa because he doesn't take Kenny's sloppy seconds, though he mentions that Kenny takes his sloppy seconds, i.e. Johanna. And even Ryan is shading his partner for her pathetic boy obsessiveness. Brandon decides to drink, remember this, and streaks in the house where he continues to drink the morning of the elimination. TJ calls him out for drinking, so they are essentially DQ'd. CJ and Sydney decide to come up with a lie/story about what happened in the exile. That then speaks to CJ about how he doesn't like how Wes treats the two of them, and they're losing respect for Wes. Brandon really was not memorable up until his last episode, where he almost went to blows with Danny and then decided to drink himself drunk, causing him to get DQ'd. But we will have many more seasons of him. Caitlin seemed kind of kooky during her time on the season, and while I forgot her overall, I found myself wanting a bit more of her, but she in general never really just caught on in the challenge. We have more talk about Carly being a very fun woman, and we see Sandy and Danny still being distant due to the issues from the last episode. We do see Jen and Pete hooking up and making out, where Ryan jokes with Jen about finally getting with a boy on the challenge, but they then talk about making it halfway through the season, and the both of them have to choose a side now, or they're getting close to that point. Danny is speaking to Mandy about how he will do anything for Wes and how he's one of his best friends, and Wes also helped him out when his mother passed away. Danny and Wes are talking, and Wes realizes that Danny is too much of an emotional liability, and we do start to see Wes get sloppy at around this time. CJ and Landon are at the bottom of the alliance, but things are changing, where Wes is ready to send Danny home, where Evelyn agrees with this. Wes speaks to Danny about this, and he says that the team mentions that he has nothing to offer, so they are willing to send him home. And Wes is absolving any sort of responsibility from this regarding himself. And Danny sees that Wes is full of shit since he knows it's really Wes, and he knows Wes. They continue arguing for a bit, and Danny tells Wes that if he comes back, he is switching sides. Danny speaks to Evelyn and the crew, and he tells him that at least give him Ryan in the exile, at worst case scenario, or best case scenario, depending on how you look at it. Dropout is a challenge where they are high on a platform and they have to jump to hold on to a kicking bag, and this challenge is fine enough, though you've seen a bunch of variations of this challenge in the future. Kenny and Laura win the daily yet again, and Danny admits to Ryan that he wants to go against him and Teresa in the exile, where Pete and Jillian end up getting voted into elimination, where Jillian outright calls Wes out for wanting his best friend to go home, and it's just a really bad look. Danny tells CJ and Landon to essentially watch out for Wes if he gets eliminated, and Wes is acting like he didn't betray Danny, though. That's exactly what he did. Obviously, when your team is getting targeted, you want to get rid of the weakest link, so the stronger people on that side can stay, but in this format, you still need all the votes you can, so I don't see why actively sending Danny home was the best idea here. Lost and found is the exile, and of course Pete and Jillian end up beating Danny and Sandy, though it was only by 30 seconds. Though allegedly, I heard on the streets that there was some cheating that happened, and if the cheating wasn't allowed, Pete and Jillian would have went home over Danny and Sandy, so yeah. Pete and Jen get more hookup time, and we have Wes and Ryan talking more about their alliance. Sandy was not memorable whatsoever in the season, and I see why she was a one-season wonder, and I think this is one of Danny's more memorable seasons, with him being backstabbed by Wes and almost getting his ass kicked by Brennan, but it's clear that there isn't much left in the gas at this point, and his time on the show is coming to an end, where I think he's only on one more season after this. Wes's team is talking about getting Kenny and Laurel out, and Wes is thinking about the second exile, which is what he's questioning CJ and Sydney about, so this is where their lie came into play. Wes starts to realize that there are holes in their story, and Sydney is trying to leave the conversation, but he knows that it just confirms that she is lying and can't come up with a story. So there are definitely cracks underneath the surface of their allegiance to one another. Jen and Ryan are talking about choosing a side, though Ryan seems like he is not for Wes at the moment, since he promises everything to the world to everyone. Wes speaks to Evelyn about the sketchiness of CJ and Sydney regarding their exile story. They question CJ yet again, where he does tell the truth about Brandon decoying right away due to drinking on the day of, and now Wes and Evelyn don't trust him anymore, though Landon does understand why CJ did it. Kenny and Laura are talking to Ryan about Wes selling his friends under the bus, where, comparatively, Kenny will go down with his friends and with the ship, but they cannot wait to nominate Evelyn and Wes against one another. Turnstile is the daily where two sides are pushing a set of vlogs going against one another, but on opposite ends, and I really do enjoy this daily challenge. It's a very simplistic but physical challenge, all about endurance. Pete and Jillian and Laura and Kenny decide to give the former to the final round, since it was just those two pairings, where people would expect the opposite, and no one wants to face the latter and excel, so Wes's alliance will continue to self-destruct. Pete and Jillian make it clear that they want one of Evelyn or Wes to go into exile, so they decide to make the matchup with Landon against CJ to save their own asses. Well, that's what Evelyn and Wes start pitching. They tell Landon that they are going to pitch in CJ, and he does not like it since they are the only... CJ is the only person that he trusts. Wes tries to manipulate Kenny to get a certain result, and things do get a bit tense between the two, but it seems like some sort of deal is made with them and Evelyn, on the surface at least. Pete says that Landon and Casey's names to be mentioned, and it seems like Jillian is shocked, but the house does vote in CJ and Sydney. So it seems like Jillian didn't want Landon and Casey to be... Carly, why did I say Casey? To be nominated here. Jillian calls out Kenny for saving Wes and Kenny, where she, Jen, and Ryan also call him out, but he mentions that he's sticking with the crew and agreed to it so Wes's alliance can crumble even more, so the people in the bottom could show how self-serving Wes as well as Evelyn are. Landon doesn't want to speak to Wes, and CJ is over them as well, but of course Wes and Evelyn are so smug and sanctimonious while trying to avoid accountability as well. Wait for Me is the exile where Landon and Carly completely dominate CJ and Sydney, where they just utterly flopped. And they're still on the puzzle when the former cross the finish line. Ryan and Jenny decide to now stick with Kenny, and everyone agrees that Wes and Evelyn need to be nominated next to one another if neither one of them win the next daily. I don't have much to say about either of them. Neither one of them were interesting throughout the season, so I see why Sydney was a one-season wonder, and the only reason why CJ seemingly came back after this was because they needed a specific amount of people from certain real-world seasons on Battle of the Sexes too. We hear many more Teresa and Wes, where we learn that most of the women really hate Laurel, which it would have been nice to have seen that in the prior 6 episodes, but that's besides the point. Anyways, Mandy and Teresa are making fun of Laurel's laugh. Laurel is talking to Ryan about being isolated, and it seems like they're on friendly, comforting terms. And it's very ironic that I am watching this a few weeks after Laurel and Ryan aired one another the fuck out on Twitter a few weeks ago. And I am recording this as season 40 is airing. Evelyn is speaking to Landon about how the underdogs need to stick together and to boot Kenny and Laurel, who are running the game. We hear Carly talk about how arrogant Laura is, and Laura is shocked that Carly thinks she is too good for them and brags about winning too much. So that's how Laura is perceived by the other women. So Laura talks about how much she hates being in the house and she's going to isolate herself again. Apparently, Kellyanne and Wes hooked up a week before the season started production, and Evelyn calls Wes out about being with Kellyanne right before the season and saying this in front of Teresa, where Wes does not appreciate this being done in front of Teresa, and Evelyn calls him out because Kellyanne expects them to get back together after the season. And Wes does admit to playing Teresa, as there's no attraction there, and he's still in love with Kellyanne, and Wes just looks horrendous in this situation. Airheads is the daily where they have to bobsled into a lake and memorize the puzzle where they swim to the puzzle to assemble it, essentially. I didn't really care for this challenge and found it to be pretty forgettable, but Landon and Carly won the daily. Evelyn and Wes campaign to Landon, though it's clear what's going to happen with him turning on them, and then campaigning to Jen and Ryan to save their hide and to prevent what is going to happen. Wes and Mandy are chosen to go in by the winners, and the house votes in Evelyn and Luke, and this is their worst case scenario. Laurel has a conversation with Evelyn about the perception of her in the house, and Evelyn tells her that she is used to it as well, and they have a nice conversation about it. Lost and Found is the exile, and Wes and Mandy lose to Evelyn and Luke, where Wes gets his karma for yelling at Carly. Sorry. Whoa, wrong person. Wes gets his karma for yelling at Casey on the first fresh meet, and Mandy is yelling at Wes to hurry the hell up. So it's kind of like a full circle moment. Teresa cries over Wes and Mandy being eliminated, and Evelyn is struggling with the fact that she is all alone, and this probably includes her partner. Wes brought a lot to the season, as he was a strategic mastermind for a while and had very good narration, while still offering a decent amount of drama. But he also had a nice fall due to his ego, and he had a pretty fun downfall here. Seeing him and Kenny go at it alone was pretty fun. Mandy had a fiery side to her, which we did see during her fight with Jen, but she just wasn't really there competitively. But she has a few more seasons, so it'll be interesting to see her progress. I was shocked to see how poorly they did in the dailies this season. Literally everyone in the house is hanging out but Evelyn, who is isolating herself as she knows that she has to get ready to fight to remain in the house. Ryan and Laurel speak about how they are close to getting to the end and he does not want to go to exile, while Laurel tells him that he won't go into the last two exiles. Landon is trying to position the leverage he has over creating the list over the next challenge since he won the last one, and he tells Kenny that he will put Kenny and Laurel third to last if Kenny gives Landon what he wants or who he wants in exile, and he's really playing more strategically now. Evelyn and Luke talk about how they need to be ready, and it's clear that there are a lot of issues between the two of them, just as a partnership. Wrecking Ball is the daily where one of the partners are tied upside down, where they have to spin while the other puts rocks down on wooden tree stumps, and then creating a statue of the rocks, but the partner has to be spun around the entire time. I really do like this challenge, though we do see Evelyn grow impatient with her partner during it. Jen and Noor win the daily, and it seems like Carly and Landon will go in with Evelyn and Luke. Evelyn snaps on her partner on the bus ride back for being way too happy despite the predicaments that they are in, and he does not get her attitude about everything. Jen and Noor choose Evelyn and Luke to be voted in, and the house votes in Carly and Landon. But the elimination happens right after the nominations in the middle of the night. Wait for me is the elimination, and Evelyn loses it on Luke and handles her elimination so poorly to the point where even TT calls her out for acting like a toddler. But honestly, I did find it to be very entertaining, despite her being a very poor sport, and it was technically her fault as to why they lost the elimination, since they skipped the last puzzle on her advice, which gave them the 5-minute penalty, which caused for them to lose. Evelyn definitely had a more villainous edit this season, and she definitely came off as more miserable this season. But it was clear that she came to play and to not have any sort of fun, as she wasn't even supposed to be on the season, since this spot actually went to Jonay, as I briefly mentioned earlier on in the season, but she had passport issues. Luke seems like a fun person, a good vibe person, he can compete, he seemed like someone who could hook up and really prove to be interesting in the future, and it does kind of suck that he never came back after this. Actually, wait, he did come back. What am I talking about? He came back for Cutthroat. So ignore that last part that I meant. I'm looking forward to see what he does on Cutthroat. Ryan and Jen are two of the only pairs in the season to never go to exile, and they plan to tell the house in fairness, which I guess is nice of them, or dutiful of them, that one of their pairs will go into the final elimination against the pair who comes back from the elimination that is taking place now. Landon and Carly are told that they are going to exile next, and they know that they're going to go home if the big alliance gets their way. Landon pulls Jen and Ryan aside to kind of pitch for them to want to go against one another, since they have a better chance of beating one another over beating him and Carly, which is definitely smart on his end. Noor is using a breathalyzer oxygen machine because he has bad asthma and doesn't react well to the cold. Obstacle is the daily challenge where they have to do all 10 obstacle courses, but at the end, an opponent will fight them from getting to the end, and TJ announces that the bottom 2 in the challenge automatically goes into elimination. This is a decent enough daily, but I don't really have much to say on it overall, though it went on from day to broad night, so it was a very long daily. Kenny and Laura are first, Landon and Carly are second, and third by 2 seconds is Pete and Jillian, with Jen and Nora and Ryan and Teresa being the final 2 and are going to exile. Wait for Me Blackout is the exile elimination here, and Jen and Nora beat Teresa and Ryan. Honestly, Teresa annoyed the hell out of me this season, but I honestly think a lot of it had to do with the editing only showing her thirst over Kenny and Wes, where she didn't get much camera time after Wes was booted, but at least she was given more seasons to make a name for herself instead of this horribly one-dimensional edit. This was most likely Ryan's best season politically and strategically, despite just missing the final here. At the same time, he doesn't offer anything else as a character, so this was a good final season, though. We all know that he is on 40 and made a reappearance on a few All-Star seasons, so his story hasn't ended here either, though it would have been a fitting end overall. The final challenge consists of 4 phases, with one being a canoe race, so they can make a puzzle, then riding a helicopter, with another puzzle waiting there, and the first place team in this part, i.e. Lennon and Carly, has a 20-minute lead, and then they have to ride bikes that are tied together. They then have to carry 25 pounds of logs to use them for some sort of pattern. Another puzzle is done after they are running, and then they have to climb the mountain to the finish line. Honestly, the final was pretty good, though I don't really care for finals in general, which is why I barely talk about them in my reviews. Landon and Carly win the season, Laura and Kenny get second, Jillian and Pete get third, and Jen and Nora get fourth. Jen became the more unlikable, egotistical, irritating presence that I remembered of her with the "I'm a vet, so I know best" and the violence that she showed. I do think she played pretty well politically this season, and I do give her credit there, but we will see the theme of her not doing well in the finals. Nora was a bore through and through, though I was happy to see some South Asian representation on the show, but he just didn't give anything and was so monotonous. He was pretty physical, but it didn't really come off as much as I thought it was going to. It was nice seeing Jillian come back and make it to another final while performing pretty well, but also just showed that on her own and when it comes to the personality/drama elements of the show, she really just doesn't have it here and doesn't stand out much at all. It seems like she and the show mutually parted ways, and for someone not very memorable, this was a good enough final season, and I also think her edits went under the radar for a lot of the season as well. It's a shame that Pete never came back, since he clearly hooked up, had an engaging personality, and seems like someone who wants to have a lot of fun, but he was one of the more interesting fresh meat in general. Kenny was a lot more tolerable this season without Johnny and Evan, in addition to some of the other allies that enabled their bullshit. A part of it was his underdog run, but that only lasted a few episodes, and he became the top dog again. At the same time, he was so overtly cocky, arrogant, and the nastiness still came through, but it wasn't causing me to grate my teeth watching it. Laurel came off borderline normal this season, and I was not used to it at all. She still wasn't liked by a lot of the other people, and she was definitely socially awkward, but we did see her dominate and definitely showed a lot of promise to be a regular. Landon and Carly were a nice team, and it was nice to see them work well together, despite being in a weird place for a lot of the season, and Carly not being the most physical. Landon learning politics for the first time was cool and a nice way to end his time on the show, and I do appreciate that he focused on a real-life career after this. Carly liked to have fun, though she wasn't crazy with it, and while it would have been fine to see her on another season, and apparently she was an alternate for a Battle of the Eras, it's really not a huge loss either, but she might return on an All-Stars or something along the lines in the future, though it's been like 15 years now. Okay, so I clearly don't have a whole lot to say about the season, especially compared to the last season in The Ruins, just based on the length of the 2 reviews. I feel like the Fresh Meat seasons in general are good, but they're not great. I think they're just missing that extra something, and I think it has to do with a lot of the rookies tending to be duds, So you still had to deal with them, and also a lot of the veterans not being the most interesting. But I feel like the simplistic format and the vets and the rookies who bring it up both seasons definitely lifted up. I do feel like this season is more interesting on a storytelling and a political point of view, especially compared to the last Fresh Meat. And I do look at the season in higher regards compared to all of the other Era 2 seasons, just due to having drama but lacking in the nasty toxicity that filled a lot of the seasons and a lot of the wonky formats that some of the seasons this era had. So we're getting pretty damn close to the end of the era, with there being Cutthroat left. And Cutthroat was the first season I watched when it decided to go back prior to 31 to watch, and I watched that season definitely over a year ago at this point. So it'll be interesting watching that season a year later and actually having the context of watching all the seasons before it, where I went into that season not blind. Of course, I'm going to do my Era 2 recap soon. That'll be interesting. And yeah, follow me on both channels and on Twitter. And I'll be back with more content soon. Bye.